This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We are being joined by fantasy author Jim Hines. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about with Jim is that he's been pretty active in looking at the issues related to how women are treated in the fantasy world. That's kind of a similar issue there. I mean, how are women treated in that world?
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
It depends. But if you look back at the history of the fantasy genre, and if you look at a lot of what's popular and popularized in the books and the literature right now, it does tend to be a lot of male-dominated stories. You have Conan. A lot of the Conan stories might be the archetype, where you have the big, muscular, kind of like me, alpha male. Wearing my Snoopy t-shirt. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very manly. And then the women, often, you just pick up the book, you look at the cover, the woman is there draped over the man's feet as a trophy.
Yes.
And
busty, scantily clad.
Right. Clothing optional in the fantasy genre.
Yeah.
If you wear armor, you wear what I believe is historically known as the useless boob plate.
Ah.
And maybe a skimpy little chainmail bikini, because you're there for decoration as a woman.
Or a prize.
Or a prize. Or often as motivation for the man.
I see.
I love...
Are there female heroines, books written around the female?
There are, and we're seeing more of them today.
Do they subscribe to that same approach, or how do they differ?
Well, I mean, one example, science fiction, not fantasy, but The Hunger Games.
Yes.
And the popularity of that one with a female running around as the protagonist who... And I love how they flipped the traditional roles for that, because not only is the female the one who can shoot and can fight and becomes the head, the symbol of this whole revolution.
The leader.
Her love interest is the baker.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I want to see more of that variety. Not just... There's nothing wrong with men being in love with women and going out to fight for them or whatever, but that can't be all that we have.
Right.
Women can be lots of different things. So can men, for that matter. But it seems like most of the stories tend to go much more narrow than that.
Well, your new book, Unbound,
Yes.
mixes both, doesn't it? Let's tell our listeners a little bit how that book goes, because you got a very strong female character in it.
Unbound is the third book in the Magic Ex Libris series. And in the first book, Libriomancer, I introduced the protagonist, whose name is Isaac Vaino, Michigan librarian from the Upper Peninsula. He's a librarian. He's a geek. He is very clever, very bright, very enthusiastic. Not so much the alpha male. And his love interest is a woman who was created from a book, from honestly a bad book, because the magic of this series is the ability to reach into books and pull things into our world. This character was originally written in this awful book as sort of that love object, that trophy. But as she grows and evolves through the series, she has already found a lot of her own strength in the first book, and that just continues to grow throughout the series. I have a lot of fun writing her and letting her run around and kick some butt. We'll put it that way.
Now, you also wrote a series, the Princess series, which was definitely in the face of that attitude about women can't do anything.
It was the Princess books, and there were 4 of them. It was me getting fed up with the way a lot of the fairy tale genre was being pushed. And that's also gotten a little better in recent years. Still have some issues, but I was looking around at these movies where women were less active in their own fates. They were more being rescued. It was the guy who would come along and ultimately save the day at the end. And why can't some of these women rescue themselves? Why can't they, better yet, team up to rescue themselves?
Right.
So I started going back to some of the old fairy tales, brought in Sleeping Beauty and made her like the ninja character. Snow White turned out to be the witch. Gave Cinderella a glass sword, and then turned them loose to rescue the prince and kill the witch and fight the bad guys, and just all sorts of fun playing with those old fairy tales and building a range of female characters.
What has been the audience response, male and female, to these changes you've made?
Generally positive. I have had a handful of guys who have come up and said, yeah, dude, Jim, I loved your Goblin books, but this princess stuff where you've got these 3 chicks on the cover, I just can't, man. I mean,
Yeah.
look, I can't be seen reading that.
I'll bet that's true.
Digital. That's what digital reading's for.
Pick up your Kindle, pick up your Nook. Nobody knows.
Now, do young women come up to you and say, thank goodness that there's somebody writing for me now? Or is that less common?
Some of them do. I've been thanked for it. Thanked for writing women characters. Thanked for writing characters who are not necessarily straight or white.
Yeah. That's probably, I never thought about that. It has been pretty much a very white male dominated kind of culture, hasn't it?
It tends to be, yeah.
Tends to be.
You also have unusual characters, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you have a psychiatrist
Yes.
in Unbound.
Nitty.
It's like, would you expect that?
No, I wouldn't.
Well, I mean, you've got these characters running around who are literally playing with the nature of reality. That's gotta mess with their heads.
It would, yes, definitely.
You watch whether it's Gandalf or Dresden or whatever. These people need some mental health and support.
I always thought the wizards handled that for them, though.
Yeah, but who helps the wizards?
Yeah,
I see. Okay, all right. A little Xanax to go with the magic potions.
I think that's part of what make your books enjoyable. There's a lot of unexpected and inside jokes, too. That's something you do. If you're a science fiction or a comic reader of that fantasy, there are a lot of little inside jokes in your books, aren't there?
Especially the new series. If you are a hardcore science fiction fantasy geek, there's some extra stuff in there for you.
I see. Oh, that's very cool.
So how long have you been reading science fiction? Longer than I've been alive.
Almost. If you round up a couple of years. I started reading when I was like 4 years old. My mother taught me to read young because she was home with me and she couldn't stand it. It's, here, I'm going to teach you to read so you can go off and do that and give me a break.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And pretty soon after that, probably. Some of the earliest things I started reading were the Narnia books, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Madeleine L'Engle, A Wrinkle in Time, that series. And I was also reading some other stuff at that point, Hardy Boys, mysteries, some Sherlock Holmes stuff. But science fiction fantasy just really grabbed me.
There's some really good stuff in that genre. I mean, we see.
I like to think so.
Yes, I mean, it's just wonderful. Who are some of the authors that you read, contemporary authors that you still read?
Oh boy, there's too many, to be honest.
Oh, really? Is that right?
Some of the people.
I don't read heavily in that area, but I'm a big William Gibson fan. Neuromancer and Mona Lisa Overdrive and all of those.
That was
They were
very much
groundbreaking, I
genre revolution, yes.
Yeah.
And now, of course, because of William Gibson, every new movement in our genre has to be called something punk.
Oh,
I'm
of
writing
course.
Goblin punk, but now it's librarian punk. And now that I'm over my princess punk phase, all William Gibson's fault.
That's true.
It's kind of like with Gone Girl. All the books coming out this year are similar to Gone Girl.
I'll bet.
The next Gone Girl.
Oh, the next Gone Girl, yes. As if we need another. Yeah. Well, so what's coming up? Now, this is your 10th book.
This is my 10th fantasy novel, yes.
And you have retired some of your series in the past. You've decided not to, or will they still bubble up again? Do you know what your next book will be?
Well, the next book is called Revisionary. It's the 4th book in the Magic Ex Libris series. It may or may not be the last one. It depends on how well these sell and whether or not I have more ideas.
Okay.
Because what I've tried to do is, with each series, as I get closure with the story, as I reach the point where I'm done, I have accomplished what I want to accomplish, I want to walk away at that point. Because I've read too many series where they dragged out too long.
I worry about that, yeah.
I don't know what's going on in the other author's head, but it feels like you've gotten bored, you're doing this because they'll pay for it, but the passion isn't here anymore.
Sue Grafton should never have started with detective fiction with the alphabet. It meant she had to do 26. And she ran
the
out.
last 12 weren't
Were
very
not
good.
very good. Yeah, and that's true. I mean, you get stuck in a situation where you're expected to continue to write about those people.
Have you thought of breaking out of the genre?
Oh, that's interesting.
Not really.
Okay, I'm just curious. And it's,
I've looked. Okay, the only time that I have even remotely considered it is when I step back and sort of think, well, from a financial standpoint, if I want to really make a good living at this, maybe I should adopt a pen name and start writing erotica.
Right.
I have not actually gone that route.
there is a sub-genre of that in science fiction, isn't there?
There's a continuum.
Yeah.
There's paranormal romance has gotten really popular.
It has, hasn't
where
it?
it mixes that fantasy element with stronger romance and sometimes into the erotica line. And yeah, that's very popular.
I think it was Anthony Bourdain who did a show, and he was looking at anime and what's happened there with the whole, paranormal and people with tentacles kind of subgenres. So they always
Yes.
keep inventing new things along that line. I would, if you don't mind, want to ask you, because Bill and I have been talking about this. Amazon is on you're with a traditional author. You have a New York publisher, and that is
Yep.
a wonderful thing to have. Many self-published authors in the area of fantasy and science fiction were happy to be self-published and doing it in the new digital realm with Kindle books online and the Kindle
Sure.
Direct. Amazon has now decided to do Kindle like
Unlimited?
Netflix, yes, Kindle
Yes, they
Unlimited,
have.
and it certainly has changed the mix in terms of income for authors. Are your books in that area, and will yours are not being sold through that?
I have self-published a few things. I've done a few sort of electronic chapbooks of short stories. Last month, I put out a project called Rise of the Spider Goddess, which was an annotated version of my very first fantasy manuscript. So the story itself is awful, but the annotations are me looking back 20 years
wow,
later.
that is pretty clever.
That's clever.
It was fun, but I would not want to put it into Kindle Unlimited because one of the requirements, as I understand it, is you only sell it through Kindle.
Yes.
You shut down all other channels, and no, even aside from the fact that it doesn't seem to make sense financially, talking to other authors and how much they've made or how much they've lost, I want readers to be able to get the books as easily as possible.
Wherever they can get them.
Right. If
Yeah.
you have a Nook, then go to Barnes & Noble and get it. I don't want to tell you, nope, you can't have it because you're not on Kindle.
Yeah. I'm very concerned about this. The other day, there was a romance novelist who had left her job about 3 years ago because self-publishing gave her an opportunity to be able to make a living. And the first month after the book came out, after Amazon opened up the Unlimited, her income dropped by 75% in that 1 month, which is it did to books what Spotify did to music. And it's devaluing, again, the money that ever gets to the artist. It's done by a different formula. You're not guaranteed a certain amount of money per every copy sold. They allocate an amount of money to pay royalties and decide what your share should be, and you have no control over that.
It's
an
part
odd
of
setup.
an ongoing conversation
Yes.
among authors in the
Yes.
genre. What Amazon does, they tend to do very, very well. Watching them move in and sort of make a place for themselves as an online bookstore, watching them compete with the chain stores and drive some of them away, eliminate some of the competition, watching them set themselves up as the primary self-publishing outlet. Their strategy has been brilliant.
It has
and
been.
very effective. But I think what authors forget sometimes is that, when Amazon said, hey, we will pay authors 70% royalties, you're getting what, 12% from your traditional publisher?
Right.
Come to us. And this worked, and it was wonderful, and it opened up opportunities for people, and there were people who started selling really well and making a lot of money. There were a lot of people who didn't.
Yeah.
But there were enough success stories. Yay, this is great. Amazon did not do that for authors.
No.
Amazon did that for Amazon.
Amazon.
And that's what they're going, which they should.
And once
They're
they
a
lock
business.
them up.
And they're going to continue doing what is best for Amazon. If that coincides with what's great for authors, then cool, go us. But it's not always going to overlap. And I think that's some of what we're seeing is Amazon continuing to explore and look for how can we move Amazon forward.
If you were starting today, what route would you go? How has the business changed since you got started? How did you find an agent and end up with a New York publisher? Could someone replicate that today, or would they have to look at other options?
Someone can replicate that today. People are replicating that today. What I would suggest for people who are starting out today is to do the research. Talk to people who are traditionally published. Talk to people who are self-published. Look at how people are building a career. And look beyond just the people who have sort of established themselves as cheerleaders. You know, there are people who have built their platform on, I am a successful self-published author, and so listen to me talk about how traditional publishing is evil, or vice versa.
Right.
It's like, no, you are an outlier. Let's look at the people in between. Let's look at the people who are doing a hybrid approach, who are doing self-publishing and traditional. I think I would still try to go traditional, try to land an agent, try to get one of the bigger publishers, because I like the fact that my publisher does a lot of the work for me.
Yeah.
I like the fact that my books end up in bookstores.
Yes.
I like that they do have a publicity budget for me, that they send out review copies, that they have copy editors and proofreaders and an editor who will call me up on the phone and say, Jim, we got to talk.
That's great. Yeah, that's hard to find, isn't it?
It is. And it's slow. It is a slow process finding an agent that you can trust, finding an agent that works for you, finding a good publisher. There will be rejection. There will be probably years of sending stuff out and getting better and researching before you start to break in. If I was doing it again, I would like to believe that I would be patient and I would be stubborn and I would continue with the route I wanted to go. But honestly, I don't know, because it is a long process and it is frustrating.
The writing is long, the turnaround time to get things done before it comes
the
out.
rejections, the waiting to hear back from everybody.
Oh.
It
People
can
do
be-
it because they have to.
Yeah. Because you have to, because you love it, and because you are very stubborn about what you want to accomplish.
I would like to thank Jim Hines for being here, and give us the name again of the new book.
The new book is called Unbound. There is an excerpt and information about all of the series at jimchines.com.
Thank you so much for appearing, and please check out the website. We'll try to get some information up on LansingOnlineNews.com as well, so that people can be able to access and find out more about your books. And thank you for taking the time, and also for doing your best to get women engaged in that whole realm and give them an equal shot. You've been listening to Lansing Online News Radio. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. Come back next Monday night at 7 o'clock when Bonnie Bucqueroux and Bill Castaneer will be back again. Thank you very much.